First, I'd like to thank Sandy for asking me to speak. Right off the bat, I'll let you know that I'm terrified to be up here, but it was a cool thing to hear that this is the first gathering since 2019, because when I was driving over here, I was thinking like what a gift it is to gather as community, and even more powerful than that, how powerful it is to gather in faith. So again, my name is Mark Ney. I'm the Street Outreach Coordinator for Good Samaritan Ministries. Before I get into what that is and what it is that I do, I think it's best to maybe give a little background on me and my personal experiences. I am born and raised in Helena. I would say, and I don't know what a normal family is, but to a very loving, normal family. I have 3 sisters and 2 brothers. I played sports, played football at Carroll College, was married at one time. I'm a father of 2 children. Was very successful in business at one point in my life. I used to run around in a shirt and tie. But I think the thing that I want to speak to is like on the surface in my life, everything looked very pretty, looked very good, but there was something a lot deeper going on inside of me, and I think it started in my early teenage years, and what that was kind of this daily growing disconnect. I felt so disconnected from the world around me. I felt so disconnected from my life, disconnected from my relationships, and for me, the way that I guess my solution to that was substance. So at 15 years old was my first experience with drugs and alcohol, and that turned into a 25-year relationship, very destructive. But I think it was easy for me to point my finger at the substance, but it was what was going on inside of me, and it was, again, what I really want to speak to is that disconnect, which I think later in my life manifested itself as mental illness. So in about my mid-30s, I went through a divorce. Again, I was still a guy in a shirt and tie. I still had my children, but my substance use as well as my mental health really started to I guess it reached a point that I couldn't hide it anymore. And in 2016, I began to experience, I guess, my first bout with homelessness, or homelessness in my life, which ran from 2016 to 2020. Homelessness for me started, I was couch surfing, which is considered homeless. When that ran its course, eventually I found my way into treatment centers. I'd come out of a treatment center. There was no more couches for me to surf on. I had a vehicle. I started sleeping in a vehicle, and then found my way into shelters. I did stay at God's Love. I have slept everywhere in this town. There's not a spot that I haven't found to sleep. I also spent time on the streets in Butte and in Missoula, both in the shelters, also times in transitional housings, jails, and everywhere in between. In 2020, I went through my 5th treatment center. This time it stuck. I moved to Billings, went to treatment. I stayed in a sober living. I lived in a sober living environment for about 20 months. Back into my own sustainable housing. I've been clean since August 16th of 2020. So I guess 4 years homeless and 2 years living on the streets, I guess uniquely prepared me for this street outreach opportunity. So what street outreach is, Street outreach was a position created by an emergency solutions grant. I wish I could give you the exact dates. It was before I started. The grant is operated by Good Samaritan Ministries. I started with Good Samaritan Ministries on just a sheer chance. I had no idea that this position was being offered. You want to talk about something greater guiding you to the door of opportunity. I was getting ready to go back to Applebee's as a cook. I'd been looking for work everywhere, and on a whim, I just had this feeling it was go to Good Samaritan, fill out an application, and maybe you can work on the dock. And the next day, I'd had enough, and I went to Applebee's and I said, can I start working again? And they were happy as heck to have me. A day later, after I just started with Applebee's, I got a call from Ara, who was our assistance coordinator, also a very, very dear friend, just one of the most amazing people I've ever met. In fact, when I was on the streets, I was walking by her house one night, and we got to talking, and she invited me, a big kind of scary homeless man, into her home and fed me dinner, which I was so grateful for. Scary as a look, it's not what we are as people. So, but anyhow, she called me up. She knew who I was. Some of the folks at Good Samaritan were familiar with my story. They were very aware that I was in recovery, and about a month later, I was doing street outreach. So, let's see here. What is it that I do, and what is it that street outreach does? I'd say the best way I could describe my job is I seek to identify our directly unsheltered population in Helena, or the greater Helena area. By unsheltered, I specifically work with folks that are living on the street, in a vehicle, in a tent, or in a camper that is not hooked up to any sort of electricity or power. So if somebody is couch surfing, yes, they're considered homeless. If somebody is at our homeless shelter, I don't work with them. If you have a roof over your head, that kind of falls into a different segment of what I do. Now, how do I identify somebody who is unsheltered? Well, I think if anybody in the Helena community, if you've driven around, you can see that it's a widespread thing. So I work with, how I find them is service providers in town can call me. They let me know that they're working with somebody that is in that crisis situation of not having a roof over their head. I work directly with our law enforcement. Oftentimes they'll call me when they're working with an individual that is in a crisis situation. And one thing I really do want to speak to is that thought crosses my mind is I really want to speak to how professional our law enforcement is. They are very well trained. They are not there to arrest. They're there to help in creating solution. So if you hear otherwise, I work right with them, and this is coming from a guy that's been arrested over and over and over and over and over. I really want to express my gratitude to what our sheriff's department and our local city police are doing in our community. They are learning, they are growing, and it's really amazing to be a part of that. So again, I digress. So I'll get calls from police, I'll get calls from community members. I left my business cards. If you have a concern about an individual, even if you're not sure whether they're sheltered or not, you can contact me, you can call me, and that's my cell phone is available 24 hours a day, because I understand that when you're living on the streets, things come up 24 hours a day. You don't shut down by going to bed in your home and locking your door. But the other thing I do is I walk the streets. So I do daily and throughout my week. I'll drive through the community. I'll walk through the downtown area. I'll walk through different areas in my own attempts to locate somebody that is unsheltered. I'll let you know right now, like I'm an expert in nothing. But I think the one thing that I'm really good at, based on my experience, and it's really widespread, and I guess in that lifestyle, is I'm pretty good at walking up and talking to people. I have no problem walking up to a person that's sitting there and going, "Hi, my name is Mark." The basis of my conversation and what I'm initially doing is making a basic assessment on what that individual's needs are, without judgment, without assumption. I think the most important thing that I do in my job is break the barrier and just communicate. Hi, how can I help you? I let the person really direct me what it is they have going on. But the idea of my job is really initially, how can I help a person get from today to the next day? Is so important to me. The last thing I want for anybody out there is for them to die. You know, I have walked around in 40 below zero. I know what it's like. So what I do is I'll make that assessment and then try to provide those immediate needs. What is it that you need? Do you need food? Do you need blankets? Do you need tent? Do you need sleeping bags? Do you need medical? So just kind of taking care of those basic, real basic human needs. My main goal is, can I get you to tomorrow? From there, and this doesn't always happen right away, but I really, because I'm on the streets on a daily basis, part of my job is really just building and maintaining trust and relationship. Oftentimes what happens is when an individual reaches a state of unsheltered in their lives, they're scared, they're alone, they feel really kind of boxed in and caged in, and maybe the last thing they want to do is trust another human being. So there's a lot of times where I've made an initial attempt to contact an individual and they don't say a word to me, and I kind of meet them where they are. If I can't determine like an emergency need, I let them be. And I think through being on the streets and just them seeing me over and over and over and over and over, eventually the walls start to come down with just a basic hello. Now, I think one of the big mistakes that I made initially, because I was blessed enough and fortunate enough and helped by so many good people to help me get off the streets, is I want to fix everything. And so I want to start immediately throwing out, well, you should do this and you should do this. And I learned quickly that was probably the greatest mistake that I made. So a victory for me, and again, this just goes to meeting people where they're at, letting them make the determination and letting them kind of guide their own lives, is really the greatest victory that I have is when somebody comes to me and says, could you please help with this? Again, I really am, a lot of people will come up to me and say, well, I need housing. Well, I'm not a housing guy. I'm not a chemical dependence guy. I'm not a medical person. I'm not a mental health counselor. I am, again, an expert in nothing. But another thing that I'm an expert in is I build relationships through our community providers. And through time, I've become an expert in who the experts are. So essentially what I do is I bridge the gap for an unsheltered person to guide them to the next level of whatever it is that they need in their lives. So if it is housing, I know the housing people. If it is, if somebody comes up to me and says, I'm really struggling with my mental health, I'm aware of who the providers are in town, and I will drive them to those appointments. I will make the appointments with them. Essentially, I'm, I guess, a friend of theirs on the streets, which is really important. I think when I was on the streets, particularly as I got buried in it, and I really got buried in the depth of my own despair, and things started to pile and pile and pile in my own lives, it gets very overwhelming. And so as I would leave a homeless shelter, as I would leave a treatment center, as I would walk out of jail, you're right back out there on your own. It's like, what do I do next? What do I do next? And one of the gifts of my job is, as these folks are facing this, I'm the one that can help them and go, this is a great idea of what to do next. So that's the basics of what it is that I do. I connect people to the experts. It really is a great gift. There's some absolutely beautiful people on the streets. In fact, every single one of them are. The stories are vast. How everybody got to the situation. It's really powerful. Now, one of the things that I guess is important for me to share is I really want to kind of open up a vision to really what's going on when somebody hits the street. Now, it's easy to look at somebody that's in that situation and make an assumption or make a judgment that it's all related to substance. You know, they're just sitting there drinking, they're just sitting there using narcotics, or I don't know, maybe that they're lazy and that they just don't want to work. It's so far from the truth, and the issues are so widespread when somebody actually reaches a state of unsheltered, or when they're unable to take care of their own kind of basic needs. When I talk about needs, I'm talking about housing, food, so on and so forth. What we often don't think about is the wife that flees her home in a domestic violence situation and all of a sudden finds herself on the streets, or herself and her children there on the streets. Yes, substance plays a role, but as one of the things that I think we all know is mental health becomes such a powerful topic in our country. Mental health is a real deal thing, and not everybody that struggles with mental health and is on the streets uses substance. Some people out there are so mentally ill that they don't know what to do. They can't even conceptualize what it means to seek resources, get the help that they need. Another big piece of I guess my puzzle in finding my path to Unsheltered. Another thing we commonly overlook is what are our basic life skills that we gained growing up. I was a poor financial manager. My family did not talk about finances, and I found myself in bankruptcy. Financial management is a huge piece. Even looking at something like getting a job, there's some folks out there that might not have interviewed in 20 years. And so what does that mean to them to walk into a business and sit down face to face with somebody and go through an interview process? I'm not even sure where I'm going with this, but let me kind of regroup my thought. So I think the biggest thing is as a community, looking past kind of our perceptions and understanding that unsheltered typically means substance, it means mental health, it means trauma, it means maybe, I don't want to say poor life skills, poor life management, and an inability to manage their own life, and an inability to manage their own finances. And then one of the other things that, again, these issues are so deep and so complex, but one of the things that's something as simple as getting an ID. How do you go about a process of getting identification when you have no identification? And I don't know if anybody's ever had to do that. I've had to do that. And so just something like that, it is next to impossible to get a human being, which they're required to have identification, to get them any form of ID, needed to move forward in getting housing, needed to move forward in getting employment. Like, you're just stuck in the water. But that's some of what I do is help people in addressing these kind of one thing at a time. I think what's really important as a community, and again, I want to speak to the Helena community. It is a giving, loving, open-minded community. The resource providers in this town are very open-minded to growth. They're very open-minded to progress. They're very open-minded to ideas. And one of the most amazing things that we do in the Helena community as service providers is we communicate together. On a weekly basis, we do a case conferencing where different providers from housing, such as Helena Housing, representatives from our medical providers, St. Peter's, Peerview, our ministries, all the different ministries in town, we gather on a weekly call and we discuss client by client each individual's needs, where we're at in the process, and how it is that we can help. So what a great community we have, so giving, very progressive, very open-minded. So that's something that I want to speak to as well. Boy, let's see. Kind of lost my train of thought here. Gotta get rambling. Boy, I'm not sure what else to really add. I want to talk about, I guess, just some of the unique situations and what I consider a victory in my job. And number one is just somebody responded to me is a victory. Somebody coming up and asking me, what it is, can you help me, as a victory. I've helped people get into treatment centers. This week we had a difficult situation. A gentleman that I was, in fact, lived on the streets with, super bad traumatic brain injury. He was ran over as a child. He's been living on the streets for probably the past 20 years, extremely schizophrenic. I've worked with him for the past, since I started in February. But it's been very concerning. He's very much a creature of habit, and he's always kind of stayed in the range of resources, and he started to disappear from his normal routine, which he stops in places. He likes to have his coffee, he likes to get his food bag, he likes to hang out. And because I have a relationship with him, I notice when he's gone, and he's drifted to another part of town, and I can't get him to go back to the other end of town. Now I can't find him, because what he does is he wanders all day, and thank goodness for the community. There's a lot of people in this town that know that I help him look for him, so I rely on phone calls from the community to find him. But over the past couple months, when I am able to find this man, I've watched him slip further and further into a very extreme schizophrenic state, going through extreme weight loss. The gentleman's probably about 6'4". He's about 130 pounds right now. An extremely tough situation, because in his own life he can't see what's going on, and that the reality is he's deteriorating and dying kind of right in front of my eyes. And there's very little that I can force upon him, because he has the right to exist as a human being, which I think we should all be grateful for, as we have the right to exist as a human being. But I was able to locate him this weekend, and I'm sorry, this is graphic, but I found him, and he was, number one, his pants were about 6 inches too big for him, and as a man, I would guess his waist size is probably 24 to a 26, but he was covered in his own feces. And what do you do with something like that? So I was grateful to get him to get in my vehicle,
get him, I'm gonna put this down. To get him into my vehicle, luckily the relationship that I had built with him, he recognized me enough that he knew he could get in my vehicle. I brought him down to our place, which is, we're an assistance center. Our place, it used to be considered a homeless drop-in center. We've really steered away from that. We want it to be a resource center. I brought him down there, what do I do? Gathered what I could for clothing, some wipes to clean him up, a belt. I couldn't find any pants that fit him, and while he's in my car, he's kind of slipping in and out of his lucid state, and sometimes he would talk to me and sometimes very distant. Bruising all over his face. I can't get out of him what had happened to him. And then to bring it back a little bit further, a couple months ago, we had found him and his collarbone was completely snapped in half, and he was unaware, that this had gone on. He just was unaware of his own pain. I was able to get him some clothing. I brought him back to the Alano Club to help him the best I could, change and clean up. I brought him in the back room, gave him some privacy. After a couple minutes, I noticed, there was no progress. I went back there, and he had taken one shoe off, and I looked at his sock, and I know this because I remember one of the things I would deal with is my feet rotting, and I could tell immediately that his feet were rotting, and he couldn't get his sock off, and his sock had plastered to his feet, and were about as hard as cement. And I was able to help him get his sock off, and if you've ever seen a homeless man's foot, it looked like hamburger. It looked like hamburger, and so the greater concern, as he had feces running down his leg, is that would get into the open sores on his feet, which will kill an individual quickly. I tried to get him to the hospital, but again, he has that right. He declined that service. I dropped him back off in town, and as I drove away, you immediately go right into what should I have done better, and I just panicked the whole weekend, and I spent the weekend, which is what I do, I drive around and try to find these folks. I was able to locate him again Tuesday, get him back to, we were actually having a meeting, several providers about this individual. I was so grateful to find him. It took a lot of convincing and a lot of cajoling, but we convinced him to accompany me up to the emergency room, and it was no small task to get him to go up to the emergency room to make sure that medically that he was okay. Very tough to get him up there, very tough to get him, there was 3 providers with him that he works with constantly and trusts the best that he can trust. Through the process, our mobile CRT, which is a crisis response team, made the determination to start the process of an involuntary commitment, which means, and thankfully we have this, but that the state, the city steps in and takes custody of that individual so that they can get the assessment and the next care that they need. But it was very hard for this gentleman to understand what was going on, and very hard to watch because in his existence, he doesn't see a problem, and he doesn't see that anything is going on, even though that he's really wasting away. And it was very compassionate, but as he was held down by six nurses, and it was very scary to him, and to see him drugged, to see the process, and he was immediately taken to our state hospital, Warm Springs. I had to testify in his commitment hearing this week. Again, a very complicated process, a very heart-wrenching process. I'm happy to report that the case is still ongoing, but he looked better. And and as I walked in, he looked at me and he smiled and he said, "You want to come sit down by me?" And I said, "All right, buddy." but just to be able to, I guess, to step in and know that for one more day that this individual is going to be okay. Another, I guess, kind of final misconception that I want to clear up is we all find and we all have this great gift in our lives to find our own path to existence and to determine what our existence means to us. So there are a large number of individuals that I work with on the streets, whereas you and I might look at it as a crisis experience and what can we do to help this person, and we put our best intentions out there. There are some folks that are very happy to exist as they exist, and they're very skilled and very versed in living a lifestyle that does not have a home, that does not include electricity and showers. And thankfully, with the vast of wealth that we have in our country, people are resilient. They're very resilient. So I think that's another misconception. And I'll walk up to people and they have no desire to do anything different. And again, I have to honor where they are in that. Anyhow, I think I keep saying this, but the last thing I want to talk about is what's so important for us as a community, that we remain open-minded to creating sustainable solutions. On top of sustainable solutions, we need to make sure that we look at our solutions also being efficient. When I go to help somebody get an ID, and I don't know what goes on in in our DMV or whatever that is, but for me to encourage somebody along in the process and say, okay, you need to get an ID, this is how we do this, there should not be the roadblocks that we have to helping somebody get the basic things that we demand of them to move forward. When I bring somebody up to the place to get an identification, again, I can't speak to what goes on up there, but let me tell you how discouraging it is for somebody trying to move forward and they get told that it's going to be 4 months for them to get identification, which they need to get housing or to get employment and to better their situation. So efficiency in what it is that we offer is very important. And I think sometimes as community providers, we can get stuck in, it has to be this way, and we get really rigid in, well, this is the way that it is, and this is the way that it is. And so remaining open-minded to, is it really necessary and is it really important to make human beings in their time of crisis and need jump through hoops? Flexibility in what it is that we offer is so key and vital. In a perfect world, I would love to put everybody in a house. In a magic world, if I could create 10,000 free houses and give each of our, we're just going to throw a number out there, each of our 10,000 unsheltered people a free home with free money, free jobs, free access to everything that there is, I wish that I could. That is not what we have, and that is not what we're up against. I think each one of us, and this just doesn't affect the unsheltered, we are aware of our economic climate right now. Generally, when somebody is trying to get off the streets, either they have no income, or if they do have income, it is SSI, SSDI, which if anybody has that, knows that that is not a lot of money, particularly given today's economic climate. One of the things that we're stuck with in Helena, Montana is those folks that are on the low income end of things. when they look at housing, they're really segmented to public housing, because our private housing is far out, the cost of private housing, rental or purchasing has far outpaced what really any of us can pay. So when somebody is segmented to our public housing sector, again, we're encouraging them to get housing. We get them through the application process, which is daunting in itself. And now we got to tell them, well, you're going to have to wait for 3 years. Yes, we do have waiting lists for our public housing that are, in some cases, 2 to 3 years long. What are we going to do? I don't know. So then we look at, well, can we put you into the private sector? Well, we've all seen what's happened with rental properties in Helena, Montana. I think a few months ago, I read somewhere, and I could be incorrect in this, but rental prices in Helena, Montana were some of the highest increases in the nation. They went up 46%. That's unsustainable for somebody that's unsheltered. It's unsustainable for me. It's unsustainable for you. I don't know what causes that to break, but these are the things that we face in helping somebody get off the streets. Anyhow, mostly what I want to say is how important it is to remember and really look beyond the fact that it's an unsheltered person, and really what it is out there is your mother out there, it's your father out there, it's your son out there, it's your daughter out there, it's your brother and your sister. And as I learned in my life, it was me. And I never would have guessed that my course in life would lead me to sleeping behind dumpsters, to sleeping in homeless shelters. I'm able to come through the other side with the grace of something much greater than me, to stand here today and be able to give back to the community and to build relationships with some really, really, really amazing people. Our brothers and sisters, our community that live on the streets. They're amazing, beautiful people. They hug, they cry, they laugh, they share with each other, and they live. Thank you for allowing me to speak. I kind of rambled there, that's what I do, but I'm certainly happy to, again, I have business cards. I really do. I will respond generally 24 hours a day because I understand what it is to be out there. So thank you. That's all I have, guys. Thank you.